Well, hello! Welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books. I should really get my, thing when I film in here. I won't be filming in here for much longer, though. More on that later. Today, I really only have 3 books to talk about, and then a DNF. Oh, my first DNF since February, which is amazing, because I feel like 2 months might be the longest I've gone in a while without a DNF. I would have had Foundation. I mean, I almost DNF'd that. I so heavily skimmed the end of it, like I told you guys. But I didn't. I did sort of read it. You know, I count that as reading it because I did read some pages. But all right, let's get into it. The 3 books to talk about. The first one is The Aeronaut's Windlass by Jim Butcher. This is the first book in the Cinder Spires series, which is the only book still. I first read this in 2017, and the second book still isn't out. He was working on his other series, completing those. Supposedly, according to his website, this year he is working on book 2 of this series, but I don't know if that is true. It has said that since late last year, so I'm not really sure. I do hope he continues with this series because I do enjoy it. So yeah, this was a reread, and this was one of my reread picks for my seasonal TBR. This is heavy as fuck. I'm gonna set it here for now. This is adult fantasy steampunk, and I think I used to think it was dystopian, but they really don't ever talk about if they're on planet Earth or not. Whatever world they are on, basically you can't live on the surface. And you don't really know why, other than there are horrible beasts that live on the surface that'll eat you and kill you. They also talk about I think the elements on the surface are really intense and bad, and that it's basically torture being there. So they live in these huge spires that are up in the air, and they have airships and all the steampunky things. They use etheric energy to keep these ships afloat. They have different stones and gems that have this energy in them, and people can utilize that energy to do things. And there are the different spires are basically different countries, and we are on Spire Albion, and that's where these main characters live and are from. Right in the beginning, literally the first maybe 5 to 10% of the book, they are attacked by Spire Aurora, and that is what sets off the rest of the chain of the events. So we do have a little bit of military aspects here, basically just because there are 3 characters, young people, towards the beginning. We have Gwendolyn, Benedict, and oh my god, I forgot her name. Bridget. Yeah, Bridget. Who are going to this military academy to train. And Gwendolyn is from a very high, aristocratic family. They don't want her to join, but she's like, it's my duty. So she's joining. Her cousin is Benedict, and he is, they're called, what are they called? They're called Warriorborn, and it's alluded that they basically have some cat-like features or cat-like DNA. They're really strong, and I don't know, and that's not really explained all that well, honestly. Part of world building stuff I'll get into later. And then Bridget, who is from one of the aristocratic houses, but it's a lower one that's kind of fallen a bit, so she's a little poor, whatever. She's joining, and she has her cat companion, Raoul. You guys might remember, if you've been here for a minute, me talking about Raoul before, because he's a fucking talking cat, and he is the prince to his little cat clan. So we have these cat clans, and they live in the spires, and they can talk. And so they speak cat, and certain humans can understand cat and speak it, and Bridget is one of these people. And then we have Folly and Master Ferris, and they are etherealists. So they are people who can basically do magical stuff with these crystals. So they're basically scientific magicians, is kind of how I see them. And then Captain Grimm, he is a disgraced ex-military ship captain, now the captain of a merchant vessel. So at the start of this, only Gwen and Benedict, and then Master Ferris and Folly, because Folly is his like apprentice. So they're the only ones that actually know each other. But pretty much right after the attack, they all link up because of plot things, you know, and they're on a mission together. So I started off reading the physical copy this time because the first time I listened to it solely on audio. And it's a great audiobook. I can't remember who fucking narrates it now. It's one person, but like he does the voices really well, and I don't know, it's a very enjoyable audiobook for me. And yeah, I was reading it physically, but this thing is fucking huge. It is huge. And I started getting very like, holy shit, am I ever gonna finish this thing? So then I started listening to the audiobook again. It was about like maybe 40% of the way through, I would say, that I started listening to the audiobook. I thoroughly love these characters, Gwen and Rowell in particular, because I mean, Rowell's a talking cat and he's so just a cat, and he's so like just overly confident, and like, these peasants are beneath me, these silly humans. And he's just so funny. I just love him. And then Gwendolyn is just such a badass bitch. She has no fear. I love her. Let me find, there's like a line about Gwen that I really love. Some dude is like coming at Bridget and being like, "You're lowly family, blah." And he's like, "You think you can yap and taunt your betters because of it?" And she says, "I'm not sure. I'll let you know once I meet someone better than me." This is a great example of Rowell being Rowell. So he's talking about Captain Grimm, and Captain Grimm said something in favor of cats. And it says, "This one," Rowell said, looking at Grimm, "this one seems smarter than most humans, little mouse." That's what he calls Bridget. "I have decided that he may stay." "Given that it is his ship that will carry us," Bridget said, her tone dry, "that seems very practical." And that's like, Bridget just like knows how Rowell is, and so she's just like, okay, sure, dude. Like, it's literally his ship. Yeah, he's gonna stay. Like, sure. Here's Rowell again, talking about someone with a big ass hat. "Such hats often signified humans who considered themselves important, which was adorable for the first few moments and trying ever after." Here's Gwendolyn, a lovely quote from her. "Fool me once, shame on you," Gwendolyn said. "Fool me twice, and I may feel inclined to blast you purely on principle." So Benedict is talking to Captain Grimm, and he's explaining there was like a little battle that happened, a little skirmish, and Gwen was a little bit heroic. I won't say what happens, but basically she threw herself into very imminent danger to save someone else. And it says, "Remarkable," Grimm murmured. "That took more than a little courage." Sorlin smiled briefly. That's Benedict Sorlin. "My dear cousin has a very odd relationship with fear, though mostly she's too busy to be bothered with it." And that is just like, that is Gwendolyn. She is just too busy to be bothered with feeling fear. Like, she's very practical, so she's like, it's a useless emotion, it's not going to do me any good, so I'm not going to be afraid. And I just love that. I admire it so much. But yeah, while those two are my favorite, the rest are all pretty great as well. The dialogue and just the authorial voice to me is so great in this book. It's very reminiscent of Gail Carriger's authorial voice, and it's like very British and like this witty, clever banter and dialogue, and I don't know, I just love it. I eat this shit up. The writing style, though, in and of itself, I did feel on this reread I felt myself getting bogged down with it a bit. There are parts where it was kind of like a little overly descriptive and a little bit tedious, and I think that's why it was taking me so long, and that's why I switched over to the audiobook. And then, as always for me, some of the action sequences, particularly the airship battles and like maneuvering in the air, and they're gonna go down at this angle and like spin around, and they're gonna do this particular maneuver to get angled behind them over here, and then this other ship comes. It's too much for my brain. I just can't keep up with it. It just makes me confused. It just makes me feel disoriented, essentially. So I did give this a little bit lower rating on this reread, but I still really thoroughly enjoy this book. I would still recommend it to any fantasy lovers, especially if you love that kind of a, I don't know, witty, light, kind of snarky, authorial voice. On my 1 to 10, I gave it a 7, which translates to 4 pushinicorns. The DNF was my classic, I think, pick for my last seasonal TBR that like just wasn't coming in from the library forever. And then finally I got the audiobook. And that is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty White or Betsy White? Betsy White. I just didn't care. It was very tedious to start. It was just this girl in Brooklyn in like, I don't know, the beginning of the 20th century. I can't remember exactly when. Or mid 20th century. And being very poor, living in abject poverty. And I was kind of like, what's the point of this book? Like, I don't even know what this book really is about. I've just heard it so many times. So then I went on Goodreads and I was looking at some reviews and I just realized I didn't care. And I saw some negative reviews saying kind of what I was feeling about just the detail of the mundane shit of her life. So I DNF'd that one. Oh, fuck. It's out there. This other one. From Dead to Worse by Charlene Harris. This is book 8. It's the Sookie Stackhouse series, adult, paranormal, fantasy, romance. Some people want to kill Sookie and her friends again. Murders happen. Sookie is all conflicted and doing moral gymnastics again. She's not as mad at Bill anymore, but he's barely present in this book, which was a delight. She's not as annoyed with Eric either about the blood bond from the previous ones. He remembers their time together from when he had amnesia, like he's remembering stuff, and I just was like, get back together! Fuck! I just want them to be together. I'm like 99% sure in the book series that they do get together again. But I can't quite remember. In the show, they never do, and it makes me very upset. She meets some family members that she didn't know she had. That's like the big thing in this one. Hates some women, is glad Sam is her boss, and hates her brother now because his wife cheated on him. I don't know. Like, I fucking don't know. I wouldn't continue with this series reread if they weren't such quick reads. And if I didn't like Amelia and Eric and Pam, like, and some other characters too, but those are like the key ones that I really enjoy them as characters. Eric and Pam for sure. Amelia didn't come until book 6, but Eric and Pam have been through the whole thing, of course. The repetitive writing style at this point is just painful. Like, not only at the beginning of each book do we get like a recap of the previous book in a very like hand-holdy kind of way, but then in this book we're getting a recap of shit that happened at the beginning of the book. Like, I don't need you to remind me like, oh, when this thing happened, this is how I acted. Like, bitch, I know, I just read it like 100 pages ago. What the fuck? I don't know. This one, this is when it started to get really fillery for me because nothing fucking happened. Like, I mean, she did meet, like I said, some family members, but that was really the point of this book. That was it, because everything else was just like bullshit. The fucking werewolves are having some bullshit and battles and blah, and Elsie. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I just don't fucking care about what's going on with the werewolves. The whole thing with Jason and Crystal, oh my god. This book had so much ammo for my future video of like, do I fucking hate Sookie Stackhouse? Because I think I might. Like, she's so fucking stupid. She's so fucking stupid. Literally, Jason married this chick, and when he got married to her, they had to do this whole ceremony essentially saying, like, if we're unfaithful to each other, disloyal to each other, like, for Crystal, it was her cousin, her brother, her uncle, I don't know, Calvin. If Crystal does some bullshit, Calvin has to be punished. And then if Jason did some bullshit, Sookie would have to be punished. And Sookie signed up for this, first of all, which was just stupid. She was like, I guess, okay, I'll do it. And this sounds kind of bad. Yeah, you think your brother cheats on everybody all the time, like you're setting yourself up. But, spoiler, Crystal actually cheated. And so they have this whole thing, right? This very serious, like, agreement, this vow that other people are involved in. So he knows his wife is cheating. And so what he does is he tells Calvin and Sookie separately, like, oh, come by the house. And he's not there, knowing that his wife is there cheating on him. okay, so that they can catch her, so that there's evidence that like she was cheating, not him, right? To me, that makes sense. Like, hello, why wouldn't you want there to be like hardcore evidence? You don't want to just tell people, oh, she cheated on me. She could lie. She could, you know what I mean? So like it made sense. But when Sookie realized that that's what Jason did, she was like, I'm so fucking mad. He's such a piece of shit. I hate him. Like, what? It makes sense. It makes sense that he would do that. Like, what are you? And she was so mad at him. She literally said that she hates him now. And I'm like, this makes no logical sense. Like, you're such a dumb bitch. You're so stupid. And if it was the other way around, you would want, like, I just don't understand. And yeah, and she saw it as like he just wanted to cause other people pain. No, he wanted there to be hard evidence that this bitch was cheating on him. What are you talking about? I don't know. The whole thing was just stupid as fuck. Ugh, I don't, like, this is what I'm talking about with like her moral gymnastics that she goes through to like logic things. It makes no sense at all. Anyway, I'm not gonna read any quotes from it right now because I don't have it, but also because I'll just save it for, you know, when I'm done with the whole fucking reread. So on my 1 to 10, this time around I gave this a 5.14, which is 2.5 Pushina corns, which, you know, for me is not great. It's not great at all. Next up, we have Remembrance by Rita Woods. This is a debut adult speculative fiction, kind of a historical fantasy, honestly, which is not what it was like marketed as necessarily. And I saw some people on Goodreads referring to it as magical realism, but I don't think I would call it magical realism. I think it's like legit fantasy. Because I mean, it's like the women in this are basically like witches. There's witches, essentially. They can do magic, and it's like they're really doing it. I don't know. I guess I'm not as familiar with the genre of magical realism to be able to determine if it counts as just like a straight up historical fantasy or like a historical magical realism. I don't know. But at any rate, there's magic happening. It spans over hundreds of years, starting off in 1791 in Haiti, and then the more recent one is like modern day Ohio. So it's 4 women, Abigail, Margot, Winter, and I don't know if it's Gael. I think it's Gael. And that's the chronological order: Abigail, Margot, Winter, and Gael. So yeah, like I said, the fantasy element is just kind of general magic, like witch-style magic, a little bit of voodoo, some speaking to the ancestors, calling forth ancestors, and things like that. But they genuinely have like magical abilities. Their stories kind of collide, and most of them meet each other at some point. So Abigail and Margot, the earlier stories, they are both slaves in their time. So there's definitely some, you know, more intense themes here. Slavery, slavery abuse, I guess, slavery violence definitely is present. There is some like sexual assault. There's sexual assault talked about, like as far as slaves and masters, like that's alluded to. None of our main characters are depicted as being raped or anything like that. So if you're okay with kind of hearing about it and it's not like a scene of it happening, you're good here. And I really appreciated the themes here. Kind of the way I perceived it is a general theme of taking control of your own life and of your destiny, deciding what is worth it to you, deciding what you're willing to sacrifice to see your life be more how you want it to be, what you're willing to risk to have your basic human rights and control over your own life. And then particularly, of course, with Abigail and Margot, there was a little bit of a discussion of the complicated relationship because both of them were they were house slaves to families that were, you know, good masters. They owned slaves, of course, and saw them as less than, for sure. but they didn't like blatantly abuse their slaves. They treated them fairly well. I keep like fairly well because it's like you're fucking owning people, but you know what I mean. They were like some of the better options for slave owners, if there is such a thing. And so they were house slaves, and so they were helping to raise the children and things. And I think it was Margot, maybe it was Abigail. I think it was Margot in particular that talked about the young boy that was the master's son, and having like the complicated relationship of loving and hating him, and knowing what he's gonna be when he's older. Right now, of course, he was just a child, but like he's white, so someday he's gonna be them. Abigail and Margot's individual stories were the most interesting to me because we saw the most of them. We got the most complexities with them. We got to know them better, for sure. And they were just, yeah, they're very compelling as characters, and their stories were very compelling. The modern day chapters with Gael, I don't understand the point necessarily, other than to show certain characters being magical and like living a really long time. That was really the only like point I could see of it. We got so little of Gael, and like some real shit was happening in her life that we just got like sprinkles of, and it kind of felt like if you're not going to be able to really delve into this the same way you delved into that, just why have it there? Because it just kind of was distracting, and it took away from these other stories. But then we didn't even get enough of Gael's stories to like, it wasn't compelling enough, it wasn't complex enough. It just was glossed over, you know, and I felt like it should have just kind of been left out. Winter and her chapters were also a bit tedious for me. There was some overlap with the other ones, but Winter, when she was young particularly, she kind of annoyed me. I realized while reading this book a trope that I don't particularly care for, and that is, I don't know if there's an actual name for it, but basically the whole thing where someone has powers that are really powerful, but they just can't use them. They don't know how to get to the core of their powers. I'm trying to use my powers. I can't do it. Until someone berates them and just spews like, you're a piece of shit, you're useless, you're worthless, I can't believe, why do you even have these powers? Like that type of vitriol. And then bam, my magical powers come into play because I'm being yelled at. I don't like it. And I feel like I don't like it because it's like, you know what's gonna fucking happen. This whole time there's this, it's like fake tension to me of like, she has these powers, but she can't use them. She has these powers, but she can't use them. I'm like, I know they're gonna come out all of a sudden, like you're building it up so much. And then, yeah, then she's getting into it with somebody and, she's clenching her fists. I'm like, okay, she's about to like explode with her power. I know that's about to happen. And so I think that's why I don't really care for it, because it's just kind of obvious. I don't know. And the payoff just doesn't always do it for me. And in this, it didn't. The payoff was kind of like, okay. Because even though she's like using these powers, she's like really not. There was a scene where like some shit is going down and she has like clicked into her powers, and like this other character is like, she's done it. By golly, finally, she has figured out the secret, the key to her power. But then she's watching some shit happen, and like a baby is almost thrown into a fire, and I'm like, bitch, use your shit. Use your powers. What are you doing? She's just standing there staring, and like this tension, oh my god, she's letting all these things happen before she actually uses the powers. And it just felt like a ploy so much. It felt like a kind of a fake, forced tension, you know what I mean? And it just stresses me out and annoys me. It's not like an exciting, like, I'm on the edge of my seat. It's like, bitch, use your shit. Oh my god. So she kind of irritated me. She was just spoiled and coddled, and supposedly her whole life had this great, immense power that this other character was expecting her to use someday to protect a whole bunch of people, and wanted her to practice, but she just like kept not practicing. And then was like, why does everybody hate me? Maybe because you're useless, and because you've had your entire life to practice this shit, but you just won't. You don't feel like it. You'd rather go like play in the fucking creek and shit. Like, it was just very annoying. And no one like made her. Like, this mentor character wasn't like impressing the importance of this shit upon her. It was just in her head, like, oh, I need her to take over someday. Tell her that. Make it clear to her. Like, you're just, and then I guess you could say, like, oh, she had to come into it on her own. Why? Why? You could have told her how important this shit was a long time ago, and maybe she would have practiced and had actual control over it, and a lot of these bad things that happen wouldn't have fucking happened. So I didn't dislike this book. I thought it was a pretty solid debut, but it just didn't hit me like I thought it was going to. And yeah, I just thought there were some pieces of it that didn't really need to be there and that took away from the stuff that was truly compelling and nuanced and more impactful. On my 1 to 10, I gave it a 6.57, which translates to an even 3 Pushinicorns. There we have it. Those are the books. I will quit yammering now. Hopefully this isn't too long. I always say that, but fuck, I feel like I talk forever. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.